welcome to the OhSoSpurs podcast. As you can see, if you're watching this on video, the whole crew is back. We have the army of elites who are going to take you through a great preview of why Spurs could well topple AZ, yet no, will topple AZ Alkmaar, but what to expect from that game, what they're like as a team, how they play, how we like to set up, which players are coming back. The great Romero debate, is it all a big coincidence or does he just not like Tottenham? And Tottenham's new leadership group, what does that all mean? So, guys, let's start with the immediate. We have a huge Europa League game afoot. I don't think a Europa League game has ever felt as big as this. So who wants to kick off, really? I know you guys have been doing a lot of research on these guys. Johnny's smirking. Go on, Johnny. What do you know? Sai's done his homework as well.
Well, okay, I'll get mine in because I reckon Sai's homework will be more impressive than mine. But so I mean, let's be honest. Stu knows his Dutch football better than any of us, but I just had a look at some of the recent games that AZ have been playing, and they're on a reasonable run of form. They've just got through to the final of the Cup, which is impressive. They had a penalties victory the other day on Thursday last week against Hercules, which is a great name. And then yesterday they lost in the league, and I'm only going to guess here that they might have been a bit of rotation, so it makes sense considering they've had 2 games since we've last played before the game when we play each other. The little things I noticed, the little players that impressed from the highlights I saw, and then looking into some of the stats. There's a Swedish left winger who I like the look of called Michael Lahto, and he scored an absolute screamer on Thursday, the Hercules game. He did a beautiful assist as well for the first goal. Looks pacey, trickery, and given that he's going to be on our right side, it's going to be an interesting one because obviously our right hand defence has been mentioned a couple of times on this podcast and probably every other Spurs podcast this season. So it's going to be just thinking about who's going to be there. Is Spence going to be there? Is Porro going to be there? I think and hope it probably will be Spence, but I'm not entirely sure. But if it's Spence, I'll be a little bit more confident because this boy looks like he's actually pretty handy. Now, I know the opposition may not have been great, but I mean, both of the Heracles goals were horrendous. The first one was a corner, and it was literally an unchallenged header at the back post. So I'd like to think we would deal with that a lot better. And then their equaliser was like a horrendous back pass by one of the midfielders from AZ. So I mean, look, I think you're right, Jim. We don't want to be complacent. There's the potential headline of Troy Pirate coming back and then doing a number on us. I mean, we're all kind of got that. We want him to do well, just not against us in this tie. And I think when you're looking overall, we should have enough, especially, well, we should 100% have enough, considering as well the return of so many players. The news today that Kuti seems to be back in the fold and looks, whether he's probably not going to start, I would imagine, but there's a lot to talk about when it comes to team selection. There's lots of different sort of permutations we can think about when we're looking at the Spurs side. I'm going to defer to Sai's homework and to Stu's superior knowledge of the Eredivisie in terms of the opposition. But apart from Michael Lahto, I wasn't particularly moved by anything. They've got some injuries. They've got couple of good players. This lad, Merdink, forward, looks to have really good stats. He's 21-year-old Dutch. He's got a dodgy hamstring though, so
it'd fit in at Spurs.
I was thinking that he might be in our shopping list. Yeah, but yeah, that's really that's all. Those are sort of the key points that I would pick up on. And I don't want to ruin it for anyone else.
So Johnny's taken us through the history of AZ from 1905 up until 2025. Up until
yesterday, yeah.
Anything left for you there you wanted to unpack, Si?
I started doing a little bit of a look, trying to do some comparisons between Tottenham and AZ in the league, and got to the conclusion quite quickly that comparing league form across the two leagues is a really difficult thing to do. And the absolute stats against each other don't mean a lot. So then I started to have a look and say, right, okay, let's look at the Europa League stats between the teams for the season. And if you take out the Galatasaray game, because that was a playoff, they've obviously played 10 games this season rather than the 8, and those 2 were Galatasaray. Their goals were really boosted by that because they had a difference of +4 in their goal difference. I think +4. No, +3. But they scored 6 goals, so that elevated their goals scored. but their stats are not really at the same level as us for the Europa League, and I thought that was a much fairer comparison in terms of XG and in terms of goals scored, etc. We should be stronger than them, especially given the players that we've got coming back. One of the things I also looked at was they do play an expansive, open, front-footed game, but they're really quite strong defensively. In the league, they're conceding no more than a goal a game at the moment, and away from home, it's a similar sort of stat. So they're not going to be easy to break down. But I think that their front foot football will enable space and enable areas that we can break into. They like to play out from the back, but they like to get the ball forward as quickly as possible, and they use this player in the midfield, and I'm going to get the pronunciation wrong, Stu, so you're going to have to help me on this. Sven Meinens. Sven Meinens. He's their number 10, and I looked at the comparison in terms of him and Maddison, and Maddison's numbers are not as good as his in the Europa League.
He's injured,
he's got
isn't
4 goals in the Europa.
He's injured.
This and he's their number 10 because Martins usually plays with a double pivot with that 4-2-3-1 formation, and this guy Meinens, he is that roaming number 10. And if you compare his heat map to Maddison really likes getting into that left inside channel, right? He very rarely goes right. Meinens is everywhere though. You look at his heat map and he's all over the place, so he's got a license to roam. He could be a guy to keep an eye on, and he looks like he's had a pretty good season this season. So that was really what I looked at, and you can't underestimate the Galatasaray result because we struggled out there, right?
Yeah, that's true.
What are you two laughing at anyway in the background?
The fella you've been talking about for the last 2 minutes is injured and he's not back till May.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he got injured on like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I looked at it. It wasn't coming out. Oh, forget that then.
Well, the good news is this fantastic player who's a big threat is unavailable.
He's out. That's what I was getting round to. He would have been a massive threat.
In Johnny's style, just getting there.
Out. I didn't even hear you mention him. You must have pronounced his name wrong. Did you say Meinens? I would have picked up on that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was.
But anyway,
Meinens.
He got injured 2 weeks ago, which is lucky for us. They've got a couple of players out. So Meerdink has got an amazing, as Johnny said, he's like a super sub. So he tends to be on the bench as the backup to Parrott. But when he does come on, he tends to be able to find the goal. I think he's got an average of like 1.6 goals per 90 minutes or something like that. But he's been out injured as well. And I think he might be back for the game, but hopefully he won't be match fit. So that could also be in our favor. Van Bommel, who is Mark Van Bommel's son, he's another really promising kid. He's 20 years old and he's injured. He might be back for the game, but again, he's been out since the PSV game back in January, which is again in our favor because he's a really good left winger. And another player that they've got out, which is kind of a dribbly right winger, is Adai, who also creates a lot of chances and assists. But Johnny was quite right about their left winger. But they've also got a couple of, I think, pretty good right wingers, which are Poku and Sadik. They can chip in with quite a few assists and goals. And as you were saying before as well, Sai, that their double pivot they're really their strength. Like they're two really strong midfield players of Jordi Klaasie and Koopmeiners, who is the brother of the Koopmeiners who plays for Juventus, who also plays with the Dutch national team. So those two kind of dominate the midfield and kind of dictate and do a lot of supportive play.
What are their fullbacks like, Stu? Because they obviously play a double pipot to allow their fullbacks to get further forward,
so
right?
Their fullbacks get forward. The right back is actually a Japanese player, Maikuma, who hopefully Ange will know quite a bit about. And he gets one of the best, if you look at the ratings he gets per game, it's one of the best top 3 for the team. And their left back is Wolf, and he gets a lot of assists as well. So they really are strong, as you said. They bomb forward in a really strong way of how they create their style of play. I think, and in general, it's a very young team. So also I think if we are able to get on top of them, hopefully the inexperience will kind of play in our favor. I mean, saying that, our team's pretty young as well. But it's a typical Dutch, the Dutch club team. It's very young, and anybody good tends to obviously go to a better European league. In general, though, if you remember when we played them the first time, they were in the midst of terrible, terrible form. They were losing pretty much every game they were playing. I think they went through something like 6 games in a row that they lost. And okay, we beat them. What was it 10 men? We beat them, but they still had a couple of chances to get a point, from what I remember. Whereas this time around, since the winter break, they have had a heck of a lot of form. And you're saying, Si, before they made the cup final, they actually knocked out Ajax on the way, and Ajax are beating every single team they play at the moment. So that also gives you a little bit of an indication of how well this team is playing. So these guys are not going to be mugs. I mean, nobody beats Galatasaray 4-1. So I think it should be a team we beat, but it's not going to be as easy as we think. And, we were saying before that they lost the weekend, but I think that they had a bit of turnover. I think they probably took their eye off the ball with the big game coming up. And if they'd have won that, they'd have gone back up to third. So this is a team that is playing quite well at the moment.
Deej, you've got to tell us something positive here, because these guys just been gassing up AZ for the last 15 minutes. Can we beat them? Do we just press the hell out of them until they make mistakes? It sounds like they do make errors out the back. What do you reckon?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think that it's better for us to be gassing them up instead of, telling people that they're shit because they don't play in England, because I think that that's not truthful. They're like a very good team to have gotten this far. Like Stu said, you don't just beat Galatasaray for no reason. So yeah, I think that this team is going to be a challenge. The player that I'm looking at the most besides Parrott, because obviously kind of feels like that's always something that Tottenham always seems to fall victim to narratives, and Troy Parrott is a walking narrative at this point. But the other player that I'm looking at is really Coop Miners, because I think he's a fantastic in that double pivot. He's really, really good at breaking up opposition play. He's not necessarily as dangerous going forward, but his defending stats and watching him defend, he's very clearly very well positioned and will be an issue for us to be able to play through. So that's really where I'm focusing on. I think that the story of the game will be whether or not we'll be able to use our midfield and our wing backs to overwhelm their midfield or not, because like we mentioned earlier, they play with a double pivot. So they're really putting a lot of stock into, not letting you pass that line before the center backs. So they're going to try to keep that space between the two lines pretty closed, which will not allow us to play into Tell or Solanke or whoever's our number 9, that's like one of the more dangerous places the balls can be. And also, if it'll force Madison to drop deeper, which means he won't be up as well. So the question of the game will be whether or not we can use, I guess, our movement, like with our wingbacks specifically. I think the way that we use our wingbacks, because it's so unique, I think is going to be basically how well they deal with that is going to determine a lot of how this game is going to go.
Cope Miners actually has created as many chances as their number 10 Minans in the league. So that just shows, even from playing deeper, he's still got a bit of a creative touch for him.
Just to let you know, Minans is injured though, Stu. He got injured a couple
Really?
of
Is
weeks
that right?
ago.
Hot off the press.
Yeah,
I didn't hear
you
about
guys
that.
know that. Yeah, he got
I knew
injured
it.
a couple of weeks ago. It's just about that one. So, guys, in terms of our lineup, though, what do we expect? We've seen we are finally in a position where we can rotate. Yet when we do rotate, it's met in uproar that we didn't play our strongest 11 on paper every week by the same people who said we didn't rotate enough. So we got loads of injuries. But here we are. We are able to rotate with good players now. Spence back in's a no-brainer, right? A better option at right wing back than Porro, I think we'd all agree on. But then again, there's a first question. Is that best wing back pairing Udogie and Spence or Spence and Porro? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think it depends who you play. I think in this particular case where they've got good wingers, I would play the better defensive wing backs, which are Spence and Udogie. Whereas Porro, I think, is probably better for the ones where he can freely roam forward.
The other dilemma we have in our team regularly now is, do you play Kulusevski, who's a better player, in a weaker position on the right wing, or do you play Johnson, who's not as technically good as Kulusevski, but a more natural right winger in his natural position? What would you guys do there? What's our best option to start the game?
I think he'll play Kulusevski on the right, because I think Kulusevski puts more pressure on their left back in terms of where he gets the ball and the possession that he'll have. I think he'll push their left back further back than Johnson would. Johnson gives the ball away very easily on that right hand side at the moment. I think what you need up there is a bit of possession to hold them back. In terms of the fullbacks, I think that's where it's going to be won or lost. It's going to be what set of fullbacks can make the most impression on the game, and we have to push them back, and we're going to have to get outside them. I've got to say that I think that Spence is a better player than Porro, a better defensive player than Porro. Absolutely, 100% agree. But I really love the way that Spence operates down that left-hand side when you have overlaps on. He breaks so quickly down that left-hand side. And if you've got Odebear out there or you've got some pace out there, then those overlaps, underlaps are more powerful than if you've got Kulusevski with Spence on the right-hand side, I think. But I think Kulu will play. He'll start him on the right, I think. I think Berrival will be in the middle with Maddison and Bentancur.
So you don't think there's a slight chance? I mean, would we ever see an experiment of Sonny on the left and Odebear on the right?
It's something that could happen, but I think we'll probably want to keep Odebear to bring in the second half. I think Odebear will be a good player, but I think that his start against City signaled that he probably still needs a bit of time to learn the system, because I felt like we got a lot more dangerous down the left when we brought Son into the game, purely because of Son's link-up play with the wing back, and that part of that might be due to bringing in Spence, who is a better attacking threat than Udogie. But I do think that Udogie was making the runs that Spence was making, and Odebear, instead of finding him on the overlap, was just cutting the ball inside, but then not having enough to do anything with it, would end up just swinging it around the top of the 18. And then
he was a bit hesitant to either take his man on or use that overlap, DJ, don't you think?
Yeah, exactly. I think he just wasn't. I think he obviously really wants to dribble, because that is his biggest skill, I think, is being able to take on his man. But he isn't necessarily the kind of, I guess especially when you're playing a team like City, like those are like some of the best defenders in the world. So he would move to beat a man, but then there'd be like, either he wouldn't beat the man or there'd be another man right there, and then he'd have to just lay it off to Tell or Maddison or whoever it may be who's like behind him, and then they obviously don't have a route through either, so it just ends up swinging around all the way to the other side. And I also did want to just say I can understand starting Kulusevski on the right, but I do think it's a bit of a misconception that Johnson loses the ball a lot, because if you go look at his FBref statistics, I don't think he is anymore, but for like most of the season he had the lowest miscontrol rate of any of the top 5 leagues.
Okay.
And also is in the 90-something percentile for dispossessions and dispossessions during take-on attempts, which may be. Yeah. I think that the bigger issue with Johnson is that he doesn't do those take-on attempts very often.
Yeah, exactly.
So it feels like we're not getting much with him in terms of progression, because he's a little bit hesitant to take on his man. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's like losing the ball. We're just not.
He just circulates.
Kulusevski's a bit better at taking that ball and going that way, which Johnson is honestly probably better when the ball's already down there, but not the getting there part.
Does Dickey give us a bit more defensively down that right-hand side as well than Johnson does?
Sure.
Covers more.
Yeah.
A lot more physicality.
I just wanted to jump in to defend Odegaard. I thought in the second half he was a lot better than the first, and he was a lot more going at the defender. I think Ange got in his ear at halftime and kind of made it clear what expectations were.
Just pulled his stats up, Stu, and for this year, so he came to us and he's had 248 minutes to get used to the system and play. So of course, he's a little bit maybe like Johnson was at the start of his tenure with Tottenham, where he's probably trying to do the things he's been told rather than it coming naturally to him, and where he's finding out how to play the system. He's learning the role. He's learning what Ange needs. But I think he's certainly got the pace and the skill to be that player that takes on the fullback as we go through. But 248 minutes in his career with Tottenham at the moment. He's got a long way to go, and he's a young lad.
So, guys, should we bring it on to some more positive news, though? That according to Ange's press conference recently, he said, we've got a week before the first Europa game. We've got the weekend off. And again, that's about the time we're hoping the guys like Mickey and Romero in particular should be back in the frame. So there's a chance Romero and Mickey van der Ven are, or at least one of them, could be on the bench. for the game. Ben Davies should be back in the squad, starting or on the bench. He also said Richarlison will have a similar time frame to Madders and Brennan, which implies that, who are now back, he should be back in the frame. So we're getting to a point where we could have everyone except for Dom back, who's due 1 week later. And then we've got, apart from Dragusin, that's the whole squad back, which is
amazing.
Crazy. Just takes, of course, that international break, about 5 of them will snap their ACLs. But
say we don't have to watch Warner come on anymore.
I think Werner's
That's not what he's saying. Very much not what he's saying, apparently.
Well, Fabrizio said that Tottenham will not be taking up the option to buy Timo Werner. I'm not sure that's ITK or just like... Wow. Really?
Wow. Breaking news, guys. We got the AZ injury list earlier on, and now we got that piece of breaking news.
It's funny because, like, Jim, another thing that happened in the last few days was Archie Gray picked up the Young Player of the Year at the London Football Awards, which was lovely to see. And we've not mentioned his name yet at all. And you're talking about the players coming back. And, I know we've trotted this one out before, but that bench is looking ridiculous now. You just think of the options. So whether you're bringing, it sounds like from what most of you are saying, to have the luxury of taking Odegaard and Johnson on, you've also got the cover in midfield with Sarr is obviously going to be there. If he's, you've got Basuma if Bentancur is not playing, and Gray, and then you've got the likes of Mikey Moore and Dane Scarlett as well. It's an incredible situation considering where we were a little over a month ago. So, it's going to be really interesting, and we don't want to get too carried away. I mean, looking at the draw, because obviously we kind of know the route to the final if we manage to get there, and you can get a little bit excited when you're doing that. But, I think we almost draw a line under what's gone before. Like you said, Jim, the squad's pretty much at full strength in the next week or two. Draw a line under it and see what happens in the next 3 months, because it's almost like a sort of a reset, a new season to a degree. Hopefully people can get back on stream and be supportive, and whatever the narrative around the manager that I've noticed over the last week to 10 days is there's still a huge number of people very skeptical and don't want Ange to be around next season, but there's a sort of semi-begrudging willingness, except that if he delivers the Europa League, then he's bought his renewal as such, or he's brought his third season. I hope it doesn't require the trophy. Obviously, I want the trophy, but I don't think it necessarily means we need to pick up that gong to go with the individual award of Archie Gray's Young Player of the Year, because we've been picking up too many of those over the last few seasons. It's just going to be really interesting if we can keep those players fit. It's exciting to see what we do. And the game on Sunday, I know we're really ahead of ourselves, but that's going to be interesting too, because what I was reading was that there was a chance Solanke was back for the Bournemouth game. I was reading something earlier today, so I mean, again, these are probably going to be off the bench.
Well, on the you can go on that Premier League injuries website, and it's like the official website from the Premier League. It's got Radu out obviously for the season. Dom and Richie back on the 9th, which is Sunday. Van der Ven, Davis and Romero officially back on the 6th, which is Thursday. So you might see, as Jim alluded to, we might see those three on the bench and maybe Dom and Richie on the bench at the weekend.
Kind of a shame we got the international break when we do. Everyone's back. I know. You want everyone back in training together, and they're all off for their international teams again.
How many are we actually going to be losing? Because Dom won't be going, Madison won't be going. I doubt Van der Ven
Richie won't be going.
Richie won't be going.
Van der Ven might.
But I'm not so sure, because they have enough defenders to the Dutch, so they might not want to rush him back.
Obviously going to
be Davis might. Yeah, Davis will be called up for Wales, I would have thought, wouldn't he?
But I was thinking more of people who are really actually going to play.
Vicario. Udogie.
Vic won't play. He's got Donnarumma against him. Udogie is
but he'll go for it. He'll get called up though. But you're right. You're right. Injury risks. Yeah. Is Porro back in the frame for Spain?
Spain?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I thought you meant Udogie for a second.
No, you're right. So Kulusevski will be called up, won't he?
Yeah, Kula will. So Johnson and Davis will play. Kula will play. Will Bergwall, will he start?
Oh, he'll get called. He'll be in the squad, won't he? Whether he plays or not, I don't know.
Yeah, so it's not too heavily impacted, you wouldn't think.
Sonny, is he going to have to go to the other side of the world?
Yeah.
Who are they playing?
Well, what makes me nervous is it's Chelsea first game back, which inevitably brings endless bad
Jesus.
luck the week
That
before.
team.
Is it like a 12:30 kickoff as well on like the Saturday? 'Cause that's what they usually do to us
That's
as
a
well.
Thursday night. Is it a Thursday night?
It is. It's a weekday. Yeah,
It's a weekday. It's either a
8
Wednesday
PM
or a
on a
Thursday.
weekday.
that's shocking.
I can't get a ticket for it anyway, so
We always
but it's
lose.
still shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah, Thursday night.
Anyway, no, we've got some hope. They struggled a lot under Maresca in the second half of the season in the Championship, not Chelsea, but his previous club. And
I mean, they're also struggling in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
There is hope. We'll know we've turned a corner when you start beating Chelsea or getting points against Chelsea.
Yeah.
But so
I
let's see.
think that this last 10, 14 games will really kind of, I think, if it goes well, it'll give the whole squad a boost, and I think it will also help our summer drive because we can show players that we want to bring in what they can be joining.
Well, look at what Chelsea did at the back end of last season. They went on a trot, didn't they, at the back end of the season, and they got themselves up from about 12. I think they were in about 12th or 13th, at about the same point we are now.
Sure.
Now it was a different league at that point. Obviously, it's difficult to compare the two, but they went on a great run at the back end of the season, and there's no reason why we can't put a decent set of results together, are there?
No, true.
No,
I have a question for you guys, actually, that I'm interested because I can't decide either. If for whatever reason, we get knocked out of the Europa League, not even by AZ, but at some point, and we are in a league position where maybe if we won like most of our games, we would finish 8th or 7th, would you shut down Mickey van de Ven for the season? Because I kind of think I would.
Shut down Mickey van de Ven.
Like don't
just rest him.
Yeah, just rest him for the rest of the season.
Get him to do some
conditioning
work on those
how
hamstrings.
he needs to like change the way he runs so that he like gets injured less or whatever.
I mean, I'd want him as like a bit part player that you're just bringing on for 20 minutes and he's working on his recovery, not on. Yeah.
I don't think he would accept to be dropped. But I think it could be good for him. We've got Danso, and if Romero is back, and then bring on Mickey for half-hour shifts or something.
There's also a voice note going around, by the way, from, is it like Matty Cash's brother or something, who's actually a professional footballer as well? I can't remember who it was. But anyway, there's something to do with football. And they are speaking, they use this specialist head of medical science or something in Reading who like specialises in helping Premier League players get better after injuries. And apparently he was saying that Spurs have hired him on an interim basis until the end of the season to review their medical best practices. Because, we've openly got the head of medical role out. He's apparently temporarily stepping into that until we have a permanent person in, and we'll be doing a review of our setup, interestingly. So it seems like a weird thing. Someone would go out and make up a voice note pretending to be Matty Cash's brother and then specifically say this guy exists in Reading and get his name right, and then for attention on WhatsApp. Maybe there's some truth in it, but there also are weird people who would go through that lengths for a bit of attention. You never know. So did you want to discuss the Romero thing in a bit more detail, guys, of his the stick he gets? Like,
I don't know. First of all, it's not like he's going to play in friendlies. They're playing World Cup qualification against Uruguay and Brazil, who are like realistically their two biggest rivals when it comes to, well, I guess anything, but also like they're the two, like they are two teams that like can beat Argentina, and there aren't that many of those in CONMEBOL. So like it's not like he's going over there to play like a friendly against like the US or something like that. Like he's not going to throw his fitness away. Additionally, yeah, it sucks that the timing is what it is, but I am inclined to like believe him because like I don't know what else. Like the last time that Romero was injured and then came back for an international break, from what I remember, was for the World Cup. And he very clearly was still injured at the World Cup, but still played. And like he was rested for games because goodbye, Johnny.
He'll be back. Go on, dude.
Okay. But he was very clearly rested for games. He was very clearly not 100%. And but like, I don't know. If any of you were a World Cup winning starter and you had the choice to go play at the World Cup or not, I think even if you had like if you had a choice, you would do it basically no matter what. And I think if you really think about it, I think if you say anything else, you're lying. So like I feel like I can understand like that from him.
If he was English, everyone would be praising him. Oh, he's always playing for his country.
Yeah.
Unlike those Man United players who always flake out with an injury like Rooney and whoever else did 5 minutes before a game.
The other thing, Jim, is the rules are really clear. If you're fit and playing for your club and you get called up, you have to go. And if there's a dispute over that, the international doctor will do a review and liaise with the club on whether the player comes back or whether he stays in the squad. It's not really Romero that's deciding.
I was going to say, it's not even if he's fit. The international team have the right to call him up to check him with their own medical team.
Exactly.
And declare him fit or not fit. So
That's
we
the
don't
rules.
have a say in it.
And let's be clear, it's a preliminary squad that they've announced as well.
Yeah.
They need to announce their final squad, but it's a preliminary squad. So I think it's just.
But it's also just a cultural difference, isn't it?
No, but I was going to say Harry Kane, when he was with us, didn't miss a single opportunity to play 90 minutes for England.
Didn't he injure his ankle on one of those international games as well?
Exactly. So
it is what it is. You get decent players, World Cup winners. Guess what? They go away on international duty.
Yeah, and typically the South American players are extremely proud and dedicated to their country's national team when they get called up. There's nothing wrong with that. So anyway,
I mean, I think the conspiracy theory, from what I'm gathering, essentially is it didn't matter when the international break was. That was when Romero would be fit. But Romero doesn't decide when Romero's fit.
No.
The medical staff does.
Yes.
And medical staff, and they can relay the information to Ange. And we obviously saw what happened with Mickey van de Ven when we rushed him back. I mean, even if we didn't rush him back, we have to be we need to be very careful with these players, because there's even with Danso, there's a pretty big quality gap between our two backup center backs and our two starting center backs, which you can expect. You can't have 4 world-class center backs. I think we have 2 very, very good center backs when they're both healthy. I think we have 2 pretty good center backs as backups. I think we've done about as well as we can in terms of currently for backup options. But I don't think Romero is sitting there rubbing his hands together, collecting another Tottenham check and just saying, haha, in the middle of March, that's when I'll be healthy.
Yeah.
Because if that was the case, he wouldn't be playing until the international break. He would not play against Bournemouth, and he wouldn't play against AZ, which maybe he won't. And then he'll go and play 180 minutes for Argentina. And then maybe we can have a little bit of a different discussion. But until then,
But also himself. I mean, we spoke about Mickey getting injured when his comeback, or at least not getting injured, whatever has delayed him coming back after he played against in the Europa League game. But also Romero he came back for Chelsea, didn't even last, 20 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't blame him or the medical staff for not wanting to rush him back.
Yeah, and that injury, I know that we had a discussion about compensatory injuries when you come back, etc., and that could have been a factor. But the injury was a toe tendon that he was out with, Romero, right? And he came back and got a quad injury. I mean, you could say that that's just a bit unlucky.
But yeah, I think there's no way. I don't buy into the conspiracy theory. He does it on purpose. But there is you've got to understand. There's a level. The frustration is understandable though from Spurs fans around his lack of availability, being frustrating as a fan because you just know how good he is on his day, and you know how much better our season would be if that guy was fit for 90% of it. And I think it's more just frustration at the situation. You're just annoyed that a player that good is not more available for your club, and then it's more annoying when you see him lifting pots for someone else, his country, and you're like, this should be for us. Come on, this is ridiculous. I swear you'd play with a broken leg with Argentina, but you won't for us. In reality, we know that's not true. But anyway,
well, I mean, that kind of might be, honestly, because just because of the nature of club versus international football. Because when you're playing international, you've got 1 or 2 games every 3 months, and for club football, we have a much larger vested interest in keeping him healthy long term.
Mm.
And so that's that's the one part that I can understand, that if he goes and he plays 100 minutes, Like he plays a full 90 and then he plays like a 45 and then gets injured in the 60th minute of his second international game, I might be a little bit frustrated. But that's not even me being frustrated with him. That would be me being frustrated with the Argentinian FA because he doesn't decide if he plays or not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can a player not pull out themselves, though? I mean, assume he's got the... No? Really?
No, not these days. It has to be. They can only pull out if it's agreed with
They
the
got to fake an
international
injury,
doctor.
basically.
You
They
can't
have
use
the
the
right
right
doctor
now.
to
Look
do
at
it.
the number of
Assessing.
English players that pull out of those squads pretty much every time, especially if it's a Nations League game or something.
Wasn't there that Chelsea player? I can't remember his name, but he wanted to retire from international duty, and his country wouldn't let him.
There you go.
I think also maybe over here, Johnny, that there's a little bit more local pressure from the English managers on the English FA, etc., and it might be a little bit easier to pull out. You can't exert so much influence to the South American teams. And if you just look at what Brazil put Richie through at the World Cup, and he came back with his smashed up hamstring. You know, he played another 40 minutes with that with a torn hamstring, and you know they're desperate to play.
I suppose I don't know. Sorry, I was out there. Issues for a few minutes, but the timing of his return, it does obviously lend itself to conspiracy theorists and to this narrative, which is so frustrating with his apparent prioritization or putting Spurs down the pecking order, and then you ally that with sometimes his demeanor on the pitch, and I mean I don't necessarily subscribe to that at all, but there are times we've had the conversations earlier in the season that his kind of lax approach to certain situations within games that cost us a lot of goals in those first few games that cost points. Leicester comes to mind immediately. It's a bit frustrating, and then you're looking at Kevin Danso, who we're not really imagining in a level playing field is going to shift Kuti from starting spot necessarily, but it's just the whole business of, I suppose, of optics and what as a fan you see when you're going through what you're going through, what we've been through over the last few months, and then somebody who's like this, he's our player, and there's been times when you sort of look at Romero and think, you realise how good he can be, but he's an incredibly frustrating player because he has been inconsistent. There's the whole thing about the media's approach to him and this sort of slightly unfair, well, very unfair probably, tarring of this sort of unhinged kind of, Latin player that just goes gung-ho and stuff. He's a really complicated figure. For him just to be returning on the eve of an international weekend is interesting. What I would be also interested in is just the stats in terms of his availability for us, which we've discussed before, compared to the number of games that he might be missing for Argentina in the same sort of time span. And you're right, Si, because clearly there are nothing like as many games. But just for the conspiracy theorists, is the coinciding of his availability and international weekends or whatever windows, is that like just something that we imagine doesn't happen, or is he actually missing international windows?
I can see Deej clicking away there. I think he's going to come back live
He's
stats.
coming
Live
up
stats.
I'll see if I can find something.
Question
40% of ours.
Yeah. He's
Question
not
on
perfect,
Romero.
though. He has
On Romero with his gung-ho piece that you raised there, Johnny. Does Spence make him less gung-ho because he's not as exposed as when Porro's playing there?
That's a good question. Yeah.
So if Spence is at right back, does he, with his pace, does he stop Romero being so gung-ho because the amount of space that Porro leaves behind him?
On the other side as well.
Guys, I'm interested, though, to touch on, talking of leaders in Romero and this leadership group that's coming up, a new leadership group for Spurs, if you believe what you read. So this is, to be clear, it's the players who aren't captain or vice captain, but you need to keep them happy, so you give them a title because you aren't allowed to give them a pay rise so they don't quit.
Vice captain.
You do that, didn't
Vice
you?
captain?
Yeah, vice assistant to the regional
Assistant
manager.
to the regional manager.
Assistant to the regional manager. But yeah, who do we think, if there's, say, 3 players that enter that group, who do we think they are? I've got a hot take on
Before we
Archie
talk
Gray,
about this, I found a little bit about Romero's injury history. So Romero missed all of the games for Argentina leading up to the World Cup. So he wasn't necessarily forcing himself back for that. He probably did force himself back a little bit for the end of the World Cup, but like I said, I feel like that's understandable. And then outside of this injury run where he's basically missed 30 games in a row, he the problem is that like he didn't actually miss that many games for us. He missed maybe 6-7 games for us in the 22-23 season with injuries. Actually no, closer to 9. But he's has like all of these like small injuries, but there are like it's with the exception of this one, because there hasn't been an international break in a while. It's not like he's like never missing games for Argentina either. He is missed. There are lots of examples of him missing games for Argentina, even specifically missing Argentina and like being held out of just international breaks.
Well, there you go. D just debunked the myth. It's all made up in your head.
Mythbuster.
Well, he misses games for everyone, not just Spurs. So get him out.
Everyone.
Anyway, but on a serious note, I think I don't want to go back to topics, but we do, I think, agree that if we want to truly kick on, he's too good to be sat on the bench for 40% of the season. I would rather build a defence around 2 players of Kevin Danso's quality who are available 90% of the time than 2 Romero-type qualities available 40% of the time. That's just my view. Maybe it's not yours too. Ideally, I'd like to keep all of them.
Yeah.
But it's like Ledley King was always better than Michael Dawson, but Michael Dawson was a more valuable player for Spurs because he was available every week. Even though Ledley King's a bloody legend. I love you, Ledley. Anyway, the leadership group. Do we reckon Archie Gray could sneak in at 17 years old?
No.
I know he's 18.
I can, because it's like a leadership group, and this is, from what I understand, at least from reading this Football London article, this is like separate from captain, vice captain. So it's like captain, vice captain, plus, like Sai was saying, the assistant to the regional manager. So I feel like it would make a little bit of sense for potentially Archie Gray to be the assistant to the regional manager, you know?
Yeah.
Like
agreed.
he very clearly has leadership tendencies. He's been thrown into a position where you have to like have a lot of like leadership qualities in terms of like playing as a center back, and I think he's done admirably well given like his playing experience beforehand, not really having ever played that position. I think I saw something that he's played started at least 3 games in every single position along the back 4. So right back, right center back, left left back. So he's played everywhere. And I think I'm a little bit biased. Maybe it's like an old fashioned thing, but I think that leaders on the pitch, like your captain, your eventual captain, whatever, I think that those are better from the back. I think it should be a center back or goalkeeper, or maybe like a defensive midfielder.
The other obvious string to his bow is just purely his age. Whilst people might dismiss that and consider that a reason not to have him part of that group, when you look at the profile of the squad, and there's so many players who are around the sort of late teens, early 20s, I mean, it makes sense to me if I was one of those players to feel that, well, actually, it's not like, you know, considering the significant impact and presence of my dynamic, my demographic within the squads, that there should be somebody to represent us. And Archie Gray seems to be the most obvious candidate when you're looking at, you know.
Are you saying Archie Gray's the closest demographic to you?
No, I didn't say that. If you were listening carefully, Mr. Goddard.
No, I was saying to me, closest demographic to me.
I think that Archie Gray's, you know, he's got a little bit of a reputation for being like just like a massive football nerd. He's obviously got the whole family heritage and everything, and he's just grown up in that incredibly like unusual environment, which must have informed and sort of enabled him, you would imagine, and what appears to be sort of older and wiser than his age sort of would imagine it should be. Anytime you see him being interviewed, he comes across in that sort of way, as far as I'm concerned. So if you've got a group of 3 people or 4 people supporting a couple of vice captains and a captain, that leaves us with a group of 6 when you've got a squad of 25. It's quite a large group. Yeah. But I think even if it's 3, there's an argument that he should be there. Especially if you're selling. If Kuti doesn't stay, and then there's a debate about Sonny. Is Sonny going to be starting every game next year? Is Sonny going to carry on? I mean, I don't know. That's a whole other question. But I think probably even the biggest Sonny lovers amongst us, would feel, should he continue to be the club captain anyway? And that's I suppose maybe another debate, but it brings in that whole sort of bigger picture.
Yeah. I mean, just for the record, Johnny, the closest demographic in that team for us is Postecoglou. Just say.
Well, That's
very well said.
Absolutely fine.
Going back to the leadership team, you've got your captain, your 2 vice captains. You've got 3 already. Then you've got Vicario. So that's 4. I would expect someone like Solanke and Danso, because they're the more older ones, to join. So then you're already up to 6.
Yeah.
Because Danso apparently has already made a huge impact.
Oh yeah, he's 100% got to be in
Yeah,
that.
Solanke
He's awesome
as well.
Yeah, they've got to.
So that's 6. So, I mean, if you start adding Archie Gray as well, it's basically a third of the squad is.
You can't take people out.
It depends who
unless
leaves.
They're actually leaving the club. You can't that's not going to work.
Yeah,
is it?
yeah,
No.
that's it. It depends who leaves, isn't it? If we sell to Romero, then there's a spot. I think, like, I don't think he should be in there for his experience because he doesn't have that level to add. But when you're trying to keep an Archie Gray, and a club like Real Madrid or City are looking at him going, he's very good, I'll have that. Your best chance of keeping them is him thinking, but if I'm at Spurs, I get more minutes, I get more responsibility, and whilst I'm a young player, that's better for me. I wonder if those kind of things are like, I wouldn't get this at Man City. Do you know what I mean? It just keeps you there a bit longer.
Even outside of that, I feel like it might be beneficial for him because, like, if you think about it in a non-footballing context, like if you are someone who is going to be like higher up at a company, you might like shadow like someone in the C-suite first. And I can potentially see him even doing something like that, like being on the leadership team. You maybe not, like leading the leadership team, but being there, being like privy to the decisions that a leadership team makes. I don't know what decisions a leadership team makes in a football squad, but maybe he doesn't either. Maybe that's something he could get to like learn from being on the team that might be beneficial for him long term, especially if Tottenham are like going to try to keep him for like a long time and make him a future club captain.
I think he's definitely a future captain material. He's obviously a very serious lad, as Johnny said before. He's grown up with a kind of the culture. I mean, the interview he did after winning the award that, his girlfriend complains because he never goes out. You can see he lives, breathes, and is just fully focused on his football. And I just think I wouldn't want to rush it. I would just like let him grow. He's 18. Let him have another year of just being part of the squad. And then when he turns 20, and then by then we're going to lose probably Romero, Sonny, and maybe Madison by then. And then you have kind of, you bring in, Archie Gray, a Spence, hopefully, a Udogi, whoever is that you bring in more of the next generation after that.
Right, guys, we move on to an Archie Gray. Yes, we love you dearly. I hope you do listen. You've got your head screwed on,
brother.
lad.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. I do find it quite. When we were speaking to a Leeds fan. I do need to air his episode at some point. Mickey P. Carr's one. He was saying like you got to, from a Leeds perspective, how heartbreaking it is. Like when you're not. Like we should be so. Sometimes we need to take a step back and realize how lucky we are to be Spurs fans. He was like, this guy's granddad played for Leeds. Like to have a player whose granddad you loved, like as a player. That player's grandchild coming through. You're just buzzing. Like you're like. This is class. I want to build the whole team around this guy. He's one of our own he's a real one of our own, not pretend one, like Harry Kane, am I right? But he's like fully them. And then a club like Spurs goes, yoink. It's like, really? Like we're very lucky to be the club that can go yoink. I know we get yoinked as well, a little bit. But we do far more yoinking than we get yoinked. So we're very, very lucky. I think we should appreciate that. But it's quick score predictions for AZ, guys, and then we'll wrap up. Stu, what do you reckon, score-wise?
I reckon we're going to go there, and we're going to go get 3 points with a nice 2-0 win.
I think it's going to be tighter than that. I think they're going to really try and hold us. I think it's going to be a draw. It'll be a tight draw. I think 1-1.
Johnny, score prediction. AZ.
We're not playing for
Tottenham.
points, are we, Stu?
I was thinking that. But
man.
I teach you.
Yeah, I'm going to compromise between Stan and Stu. I reckon 2-1.
Deej?
I think I'm torn between 2-0 and 3-1. So in the interest of being different, I'll say 3-1. I think that having a rest will make a big difference for us. But I don't think that we can escape without Troy Parrott scoring a goal.
Yeah.
I'll go for 1-1, but then we'll beat them 3-1 in the home leg.
Yeah, I think with the players back for the home leg, I think we do a job on them at home.
Yeah. But I think it'll be a really hard away game. I think
it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah. It could definitely be a draw. I don't know. I think that this will be the first game where this setup doesn't necessarily where we're closer to a sort of setup that Matisse Tell might be able to get a foothold in the game with.
Yeah. I'd tell you something. If we came back with a 1-0 defeat, it's not a disaster, by the way.
No, it's not. It's still in it. It's a tough game. Right, guys, come on, you Spurs, I think is due, and look forward to. We should get some more consistency back with these episodes, by the way. If you're
Bournemouth
listening.
on Sunday.
Just everyone's been holidaying, working, different time zoning, all those kind of things. But by the way, if you want an extra episode a week, you can sign up to our memberships. It's only $1.99 a month, and it helps us grow the show and get cool guests on as well. Oh, and I've got someone confirmed whilst we were recording this pod, the author of Done Deal. So have you seen this? It's actually a really big book. It's like one of the top football books on Amazon. So Daniel's going to come on, and we're going to get insights into all the mystical, slimy, but cool and weird stuff that goes on behind football. So I thought we were really cool because I've been trying to get like an agent on for us for a while, but agents are really hard to get on. But Daniel knows a lot about that realm, like all the kind of tips and tricks and secrets that go on behind the scenes in football and all that kind of stuff. I think it's really cool to get like someone who actually knows versus what our fans' perception is. Like, we have conspiracy theories all the time. Do clubs just go pretend to bid £70 million for Gahey just to appease 7 people on Twitter? Or maybe that might not actually be true. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway.
Can we not get Charlie Kane on? He can't be too busy at the moment.
I've heard he's overhauling his office again.
Got some new suits to buy.
Yeah.
The other exciting scoop is that I'm going to be scouting Mason Melia on Friday. So I'll be back.
Oh yeah,
right.
Off to big derby
over.
this Friday night. Shamrock Rovers versus St. Pat's.
Our Irish
I'll be
correspondent.
there.
Called up the best scout we know to go scout him, but he didn't answer, so we're sending Johnny.
Ouch!
Yeah.
All right, Deej. That's all right, mate.
Right, a kiss up.
You're only about an inch away from me on the screen, so just be careful, pal.
We should get David Clayton on as well, who did a fun fact about Spurs every single day of the year. Have you seen this?
That's pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
So do you want to hear what today's fun? Every episode we should bring up the fun fact
we should do
of
that.
Spurs. So 3rd of March. Right, here we go.
Nothing.
On the 3rd of March, Darren Anderton is born in Southampton. The midfielder started his career. Basically, Darren Anderton was born.
I love Darren Anderton.
He was unfairly criticised for his fitness record, earning the name Sick Note over a period of time, even though he made 300 league appearances for Spurs and also represented England on 30 occasions. Anderton was inducted into the Tottenham Hotspur Hall of Fame in 2009. Away from White Hart Lane, he enjoyed spells at Wolves, Bournemouth, until his retirement from the game in December 2008. I had him in my all-time right winger in the Tottenham squad, all-time that I did. Just based on what you oldies tell me. Because I never saw him play.
A lot of disrespect on this pod today.
Yeah, Johnny, we're getting right ripped into it. My memory's going. You're scouting, he's not up to scratch. We're too old to remember, or we're old enough to remember, or to be fair,
at least we can remember
back a few right wingers past Anderton.
Anyway, up the Spurs, boys.
Come on, Tottenham.
Go on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Go on, you Spurs.